This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for the Intentionality Gurus with Candace Pollock. And last week we were talking about intentions, and today we're going to be continuing that conversation, it sounds like. She titled it Your Life as Algorithms. Now, Candace, most of us hate the algorithms we get caught up on our computers. I know I hate it. I
Oh,
go,
and those incessant bot
yeah,
algorithms when you call a help center or something. It's like, no, 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 my issue isn't on the options you gave me. I have a different issue. Give me a third or fourth or sixth option. Yes.
exactly. So I yell at my computer and the phone all the time.
Yes, I do too. And I always love it when I talk to the help center and they say, and hello, da 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 da, my name is such and such. And one woman actually said, my name is AI. So I don't know what that was about. Maybe it was AI. She was clearly from another country. And then everybody goes into, how are you doing today? And I always say, well, it depends on the answer you give me today.
I like that. That's a
And
good
and
one.
I don't go so far as to say your day may depend on how it goes for me on, with your answer today. Because I may yell at you knowing that you're not responsible, but you're the person in front of me.
Absolutely. So, how do these algorithms really affect our life?
All right. So think about things you habitually do. The alarm goes off, I presume, in the morning, and you get up. Then what do you do?
Um, I run to the bathroom.
Hmm? Okay, we can jump over some of that part. And then what
Right.
happens?
Um, Now I'm one of those people when the alarm goes off, I get right out of bed and I start my day, I go take my shower, I brush my teeth, and I'm dressed within an hour.
So all of those are algorithms.
Right.
Okay. So if the alarm goes off, I get up and, so if X alarm goes off, then I get up. That's Y. All right. And so on. And we have strings of algorithms, and most of these we do unconsciously. Driving home from work, do you take the same path? I like to switch it up, always have, so that I don't necessarily like a pony going back to the um, stable. I remember years and years ago, I was riding with a friend, and the horse saw the stable or knew he was on the path very close to the stable, and he took off with my friend. Well, somebody had closed the gate, and he didn't see it or didn't care about it, and he ran into it, and then he rolled over her and everything else. It
Oh,
was pretty scary. And fortunately, my horse either didn't see the gate or didn't recognize that he was close to the stable where he could go home and get these humans off of him. So the idea is we do live by algorithms, these unconscious patterns of behavior and thoughts, actually. So name some others that might occur at other times that are not necessarily a daily thing that you might think of.
well, my IT job that I do, um, I didn't realize until the other day that I follow the same pattern when I go in and I troubleshoot. And it's not the pattern that they normally would give me, but it's what seems logical to me. But I never realized I had a method to it until I was working Friday, and it was like I realized I felt like a robot.
Exactly. So that's the point. And I love, we did not speak about this before today. All
Nope.
right. But you said almost like a robot. And that's the point. That we, retune, what's the word? Routinely, I don't know what's wrong with my head today, routinely um, do these actions automatically. And there's not a lot of conscious thought in it. So years ago, there's a book called I forget what it's called, living algorithms to live by Brian Christian and Tom Griffiths. And I totally forgot till this morning that I had read this book. And I loved this book. It was a real game changer for me. And so the exercise in this one program that we were encouraged to do was to identify your top optimal algorithms, the things that support the things that you want to have more of in your life, and that support the things that are important to you. And the problem I was having was I couldn't come up with 100, but I could see that I was living by, and this is the first time for me, I was living by a number of negative algorithms, meaning that they were just plain old algorithms, if X then Y, but I would avoid this, or I would think that automatically when certain things occurred. So think of something like that in your life that might pop up.
So it's interesting. And again, everybody, we did not rehearse this. But this morning, I wrote to somebody very detailed information as to why I can't do certain things for them. Because they're constantly asking me, do this for me, do that for me.
Is this the same person that?
Yes, the same
Okay.
person we've talked about before.
Okay.
But it got to the point today that it was like, this is bogging me down. I can't keep writing this over and over again or repeating it verbally. And I just explained that these are the things that I do. This is basically my life. Okay. And I don't have time to add in this other rhythm just for them. And I felt so good after I wrote it, because to me it was like, now I understand why I keep getting hijacked. Now I understand why, in the middle of the day, I'm angry and I don't want to do my next podcast. It's not because of the next podcast. It's because I have to fit in all this other stuff that doesn't work in my rhythm of the day. And after I wrote it, I had my husband read it, and he finally said, I think you finally got it. And it was like, I think so too.
We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, well,
Because these algorithms are deeply rooted.
yeah,
All right.
right.
Yeah, and you'll notice them showing up in more and more disguised forms. And the idea is you can be very rational about these things. That person's not going to change. And
Right.
that person won't be rational and say, oh, I guess Karen doesn't do these things. But so maybe part of the algorithm, and I'm just going out on a limb here, so push back on me if it seems too direct, but maybe part of the algorithm is if she asks or assumes, then you feel the need to respond.
That's how it's been.
Yeah.
And
I mean, and I'm wired the same way
Yeah.
that, if somebody has a need, I respond to it. I don't necessarily, address the need, but I'll respond to it and try and, politely explain things. But, and I would never be rude, but for me, it was difficult to say no to somebody.
Right. And even though in this scenario, I've used the word no,
Yeah.
it's never been heard. But when I formulated this letter this morning, it was like, I didn't use the word no. I just said, this is the way I have to continue to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
And if that doesn't fit, then, you're going to have to find another way to resolve your issues, because it just takes too much out of my life. And
Well, and just as you said, that just even crafting the response is time consuming.
right, exactly.
So maybe going forward, part of the algorithm will be when you already have that thought in mind that this is outside the scope of what I do.
Right.
And then she's going to respond. So you either respond or you don't respond. And if you respond, you might consider just forwarding the same email.
Yep. That's
You
exactly
know,
what my
because
husband
that's your
said.
policy, that's
Yeah.
your letter of engagement or your contract or whatever. But it doesn't mean it's not going to have that emotional angst
Oh,
and so on because it seems unkind. But that person is just, they have a need and their need is going to trigger bunches of stuff in us.
exactly. Exactly. And my husband made the same comment. He said, you have to save this letter. He said, because
Uh-huh.
it will take less time for you
Yeah.
to resend it and then you can move on. And it was like, okay, that makes sense. Because each time I felt like I had to respond in more detail or whatever.
And
And
she would find a little exception, if I remember correctly. She would always have, oh no, it wasn't that, it was this, and
right,
and not, it may not be fair to say it, but I'm going to say it anyway. It was almost a form of gaslighting. Oh no, no, it wasn't that, it was this. This is just this unconscious, bottomless need for this person to get what she needs. And
exactly,
there's nothing wrong with her, but it doesn't fit within your template.
exactly.
Yeah,
And it may fit for somebody else, and that's great. And
yeah.
that's, one of the things that I've learned so much in our podcast and now that I'm coaching is that, we all look at life differently. And if something doesn't fit, then you need to either adjust or you have to, live your life the way you want to live it, but you can't influence others. So,
Well, and the other part, the underlying, part, the algorithm is its boundaries. And, we don't have to live boundaryless less.
yep,
We can have nice, safe boundaries. If somebody on the highway were continued to like swerve into your lane and so on, we have a few choices and that can, that analogy can illustrate something that is more physically dangerous, that it can't go on. So you have to do something different. And so kudos to doing something different. What other kinds of situations might pop up in terms of where nice Karen has to repeat herself?
um, well, obviously with my son. um, but I think truthfully, a lot of people in relationships find themselves falling into habits based on algorithms they that don't fit them or the other person. And I have to say that I've gone through a lot of changes since my son has moved away. Um, because now we're both realizing what doesn't fit for him and what doesn't fit for me.
Mhm, mhm.
And if you would have told me 2 years ago when he moved that I would have understood these boundaries, I would have told you that, no, you're crazy. It's never going to change, but it does. And it can make you a stronger and better person for it.
So if I can just grab that, so a couple of years ago, you wouldn't have thought that these things could change. So I presume they're beneficial things, mutually beneficial things. Yeah, so the transition might have been a little dicey or scary as you navigate it and kind of assert the boundaries, repeat the boundaries. But overall, it sounds like, well, you both have learned something and have adapted,
Absolutely. And
and those are good things, right?
oh, absolutely. I mean, if you would ask my husband and my son what I was like before this, they would have said, she doesn't she doesn't change. She's going to say the same thing over and over and over again. Um,
She might mean it, that's why
yeah,
she's repeating it.
right. Well, in some cases, yeah. But I started realizing that that wasn't, you know, over time, that's not really beneficial. It doesn't help me. It doesn't help him.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And he's the same way. Okay. When he gets on a roll of something, he can call me 4 times in a day and have that same conversation.
Mhm.
And I'm worn out listening. And over the 2 years, we're seeing that that's getting less and less. When we need each other, those contacts are there, but um, we're not falling into traps that we were in the past. And so that's been a change in, how we're both living our life more efficiently.
Yeah, and the thing it reminds me of is the situation of my older sister who was really drop dead gorgeous. They did a movie in our community way back when I was in high school. She was in college, and the movie crew stayed at this place, resort area where we both worked in the summer. And they wanted to take her to Hollywood and do a screen test and stuff. I mean, she was really gorgeous. And guys were constantly calling her and falling all over her. And she was really shy. She didn't think of herself as beautiful. And noticeably, from afar, beautiful. She didn't think of herself that way. And she um, was kind. And so when a guy would call, she would say, no, no, I can't. And then she would come up with some excuse. And then if they called, or a couple of times, some of the guys in the neighborhood would come to the house, drop by. And then she would make me go to the door and answer it, or have me, if I answered the phone, she would have me basically decline them. And I was getting tired because some of the same guys were calling again and again. And I finally said to her, say no like you mean it.
Yeah.
You know, because she would always make it sound like no, but I could be convinced.
Right.
All right, now that's not your lady. I presume it's that a
No.
lady.
Yeah.
It's not your podcast person, but there are some people that they just don't pick up on the message. And so anyway, that was always, even at 14, I think it was 14, I realized, we have to say no like we mean it. And not leaving the door open to I could be convinced. And I've caught myself in that as well because I'm trying to be kind, let them down easily.
Right.
Not dates and stuff necessarily, but whatever. Um, all right, so thinking about living life as an algorithm, and there is that book by the name that I had totally forgotten about, although I just loved it. Um, what other things can you think of where algorithms play a role in your life or others' lives that you've noticed?
Well, it plays a big role of our life for our health. There's an algorithm of, you know, taking our medications and eating properly and exercising. Um, I find that um, I typically ride my stationary bike every night. And if I don't ride my stationary bike at night, I will almost automatically tell my husband I don't feel good. And it's like, it's just that feeling. I didn't ride the bike, therefore I don't feel good. But if I ride the bike, I can I can have a headache, I can have a cold, I could have the flu. But if I ride the bike, I don't have that sense of not feeling good.
So what do you think that is?
Um, I I need to follow that pattern. I need that ride on the bike to engage me into better health.
And why do you think you say I don't feel good?
Um, because it's almost like a guilt factor that I didn't ride the bike.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah.
And when you do ride the bike and that thought doesn't occur to you, what is the experience of the bike?
That I'm doing something good for myself, that I'm healthier, um, that I'm going to sleep better tonight. And the truth is, I do when I ride the bike. Um, it's it's something that I've created that is so powerful for me. And when I first started riding the stationary bike, it was it was difficult. It, I didn't see anything positive about it other than, hey, I might lose a couple of inches along the way.
Mhm.
Um, and that's what I was doing it for, was for weight loss and, losing inches. And now I'm doing it because it just makes me feel good. And if
Yeah,
it
and I
exercise
would,
made me feel good, I would have said no.
right, exactly. And but I'm curious about the little, if we took a spotlight and we put it on the time frame just before you said, um, I don't feel well, or whatever the
Mhm.
phrases are, that we say to ourselves, there's probably an algorithm there. So maybe an upset earlier in the day, or something else. Um, it doesn't have to be, but it bears scrutiny, right? Because we do automatically live by these thought habits. Those are algorithms. These um, physical habits, the interaction habits, and so on. So what do you think might be there?
So truthfully, I think the days that I don't ride the bike and I feel ill or out of sorts
Hmm.
is typically because I've waited later in the evening to think about riding the bike. So
Yeah. Uh-huh.
typically, by 7:30, I'm on the bike for a half hour. Okay. But if we've gone out or I got busy doing something else, and now it's 8 o'clock or 8:30, um, it's almost like I'm finding this excuse that I can't ride the bike. And so if I can't ride the bike, well, then I guess I don't feel good.
So what is that reinforcing?
Um, Laziness on those days.
Well, and that's a really powerful word. Is it laziness, or the idea is that one, just to be intentional, and when I say intentional, sometimes such as noticing what the pattern is. But I could imagine several things. So there might be BJ Fogg's tiny habits that are you celebrating in a conscious, intentional way when you do the bike, so that it becomes automatic at, I don't know, a certain time or certain period in a day. The other thing I can think of is Gabriel Ottochin. I always destroy her last name's pronunciation. Idea of whoop, that, what is your wish? What is your um, outcome that you're hoping for? What is the obstacle that's likely to get in the way? And then what is the plan B, for if the obstacle gets in the way. So the idea is that your wish is to be healthy and blah, 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 and have all those, beneficial side effects. The outcome that you want is to do the bike daily. And then the obstacle would be, oh, we did something else earlier in the day, or that kind of disrupted the timing of the schedule. And then plan B would be, you let it pass, but you don't miss the next day, even if some obstacle got in the way. There's a phrase from a group that I'm in that talks about miss one, but don't miss two in a row,
Well,
and which is a great thing.
and that's what happens for me.
Hmm.
That okay, so for example, we went to a concert Thursday night and we got home probably at 8:45. And all the way home, I kept saying, I've got to ride the bike as soon as we get home. And, my husband just listened to me say it, it's like no big deal to him, you know. And we get in the house and I started doing a few things. And next thing I know, I'm getting into bed and he goes, I thought you were going to ride the bike. And my first reaction was, I have a headache. And he goes, oh, okay. And he said, did you take anything for it? Well, obviously the headache wasn't that bad, but I didn't know. I didn't take anything for it. And I said, I'm just going to go to sleep. Well, I couldn't fall asleep. And at midnight, I came back into my office and I started working. Those are the disruptions. And,
Mhm.
but I know that I can't let this happen again tomorrow. And so the next day, I made sure that I was on the bike at the times that benefit me the most and, got back into my rhythm again.
So what occurs to you in terms of being able to eliminate, there's a little element of um, chastising yourself or feeling bad about it. So how can you construct an algorithm, a plan A and a plan B algorithm, so that that part doesn't have to enter into it?
Um, so like I tell all my clients that, just because you didn't do something, it's not the end of the world. You can pick up and do it, later, tomorrow, the next day. It's all about going back and doing, you know, what it is that you wanted to do.
Mhm,
And I still haven't gotten to that point 100%.
mhm.
But I keep working on it. And that's why at midnight when I was sitting here working, all of a sudden it was like, okay, so you didn't ride the bike today. All right, so you're going to ride
Bad
it.
girl, bad girl.
Yeah, yeah,
But you're not a bad girl. You're just a
yeah,
human being.
yeah.
So is there an algorithm that could be along the lines, and obviously this cannot be 100%, that you will ride the bike and then come up with a minimum number so that at least you feel positive about that part, knowing that you probably will ride the bike, except when you have a social life, that may intrude into the evening. I mean, it's a great thing to have a social life that can allow both.
So typically, on my calendar, I have it to remind me that I want to ride the bike 4 out of 7 days. And I typically now ride it 6 out of 7 days. So the day that I don't ride it, um, I still have to get myself into that mindset that it's okay that I'm not riding it. I don't have to have any specific reason why, other than I'm just not going to ride it today.
Mhm,
I want to get over that hump where I'm making an excuse to myself and to my husband, who I think is observing what I'm doing,
mhm,
which I don't think he notices one way or the other. I could tell him I ride the bike 10 times a day and he'd go, "Oh, great." Or I could say, "I'm not riding it anymore." And he'd go, "Oh, now we can throw our clothes over it." I mean, but it's in my mind that he's in the room when I'm riding it, that he's observing it.
Okay. So, I'm belaboring this because it's a mild issue of having to um there feels like a lack if you don't do it. There's something there that I
Yeah.
can't think of what the actual word is, that somehow that you're not X, or I won't use X, you're not A. All right.
Okay.
And that's not true. All right. You're just
Yeah.
a human who is actually doing pretty well with 6 days or whatever it happens to be. And but it's perfectly illustrating those situations where those kinds of things happen in our life, but they're maybe in a more serious scenario. So this one, you're not going to live or die by missing a night or a couple of
Right.
nights and so on, or you're not going to live or die by the things you say to yourself, the negative things like, oh, you didn't do it, because there's that hidden ping that we somehow didn't do what we should do. All right. And the
Right.
shoulds, can get us. Um, so I wanted to really explore that because we all have those things that are bigger where we chastise ourselves, where it's a bigger ping, negative ping, and so on. And it's just a perfect example of how unconsciously we live as a rule.
Yep.
So looking forward, that exercise that I did in that one program, we had to come up with 100 of our best, most optimal algorithms. And then I noticed, well, one, I couldn't come up with 100. because then I got mired down into all the negative ones that were actually impeding me. So I think that would be a great exercise for, anybody to do. Just to notice all those little forks in the road where we have all of those opportunities to make decisions, and how all those hidden iceberg of things are driving a lot of how we think and behave and feel. So
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to have to pay
I'm
more
going to look at
attention.
that bike
Yep,
differently.
absolutely. Absolutely. Um, although right now I'm really loving it because after almost a full year, and I want to emphasize that to my listeners, um, the inches are finally starting to come off.
Great, great,
But
great.
it's been it doesn't happen overnight. And
Mhm.
so I I know something about the bike. It's not about me losing the weight or losing the inches. It's more about me feeling good about myself doing something. So,
Being active and meeting your word to yourself and so on. Yeah, totally, totally. Cool.
well, thank you again. And we will be back next month with more of the Intentionality Gurus. Have a great
Thank you
day.
so much, Karen. All right,
Thank
bye-bye.
you.